Hello family, and welcome to another Sunday service with Eastside. At Eastside, we are all about seeking Christ, serving the community together, teaching others, and joining in worship. And this week as we join in worship, I'd like to bring into focus one of the lines from our corporate mission statement that says, corporate worship at Eastside energizes people. As we've said before, that doesn't mean we always sing fast-paced songs. We need to have time of rest and renewal, along with being energized and active in order to carry out the plan that God's placed before us. And this morning as we sing, I pray that the songs we sing can center you and allow you to rest in Christ and His love for us. Please stand with me this morning as we begin singing. Jesus, be the center. Be my source, be my life, Jesus. Jesus, be the center, be my hope, be my song. Be the fire in my heart, be the wind in these sails, be the reason that I live, Jesus, Jesus. My guide, Jesus. Be the fire in my heart, be the wind in these sails, be the reason that I live, Jesus. That I live, Jesus, Jesus. Bring your worry, grief, and pain, every cause you have for shame. Lay it all down, lay it all down. When your cares have buried you and there's nothing left to do, lay it all down, lay it all down at the feet of Jesus, at the feet of Jesus. Carried on, but your heart was tired, feared the worst and felt the fire. Lay it all down, lay it all down. Filled with all those anxious thoughts, all your doubts became your God. Lay it all down, lay it all down at the feet of Jesus, at the feet of Jesus. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. Lay it all down. nothing here that can ease the pain. Lay it all down. Lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. Give me Jesus, you can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. When I am alone, oh, when I am alone, oh, when I am alone, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. And when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. Give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you can have all this world. Just give me Jesus.
Hey Eastside, it's good to be together today, no matter where you're joining us from. It is great to seek Christ, serve the community together, teach others, and today we're going to join together in worship. So thank you for joining us. Look forward to this. As you can see, we're starting a new sermon series today called Rest and Sabbath, and it's one of those things that I've been thinking about for a good while now. I get to go on a sabbatical this summer. 3 months, the congregation is allowing me to spend 3 months away, stopping what I'm doing and doing something else. And so I've been thinking about Sabbath. I've been thinking about rest. And frankly, the last time I took a sabbatical was 14 years ago. And I did it to do some study, and so I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. This is my first time doing this, and I've been thinking a lot about that. And then with the global pandemic where everything came to a crashing halt, our ways of doing church, our ways of doing family, it was this forced stopping that made me think, okay, what is it that God is teaching us as a church? What can we learn from this stopping time? And I've heard other people, as vaccines, people are becoming vaccinated and schools are back, there's this kind of like, oh, we're getting back to the way things used to be before the pandemic. And do we like that? This rushing around from one sport to a dance class to an activity to this gathering and that gathering. Is that the kind of lifestyle that we want? And so we're going to take the month of May to just focus on rest and what does it mean to Sabbath. So that's where we're going for the next month, and I hope that together we'll learn more about what does it mean to do Sabbath well. I don't know about you, but I think for most of us, what we think about when we think about Sabbath is the 10 Commandments from Exodus chapter 20. And number 4 is the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day, keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But on the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. As a kid, I always grew up thinking that commandment, go to church, meant don't play, don't mow your yard, don't have any fun. You can go to a friend's house, but you probably should even be careful how much you play when you're at your friend's house for dinner. You're supposed to take naps. You're not supposed to do yard work. You're supposed to sit down and not do your other work. Somehow I still had to do my schoolwork. And my grandfather in the 80s had a restaurant in the small town that we grew up in. And it was the middle 80s, and we were a small town, so there was no restaurants open. The grocery store closed. The only thing that was open was the convenience store on the edge of town in the middle 80s. And my grandfather owned a restaurant, the Buggy Wheel. And people would drive to Iowa City, which is about 30 minutes away to the big city, and that's where they would go out to eat after church if you were so inclined to do so. And so people complained that none of the restaurants were open on Sunday. So my grandfather, being the entrepreneur and visionary that he was, decided to open his restaurant on Sunday from about 11 to 2 or something like that. And of course, now there were other complaints. How dare you have your restaurant open on the Sabbath? And so he was, as they say, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Those are the memories that I have as a kid of what does it mean to keep the Sabbath. But as I, of course, continue to study and learn, I'm pretty sure that's not the fullness of what God means when he talks about keeping the Sabbath. Like honoring the Sabbath. There's something that we're missing in this keeping of the Sabbath if we eliminate it to making sure you go to church and you don't go out to eat on Sunday. So what does it mean to rest? What does it mean to Sabbath? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today and looking at these words. Now, I'm going to give you a little quick Hebrew lesson. Hebrew is the language that the Bible is written in. And it was written, thousands of years before Jesus, and it's still used today. But somewhere in around 600 AD, after Jesus, they began adding vowels to the written language. Now, it was an oral culture, and so the rabbis and the teachers would keep these texts, and they would have them memorized. But in the written language, they didn't have vowels. Hebrew was just a consonant language. And so you'll see here this little T and that little dot and that little line and that little dot and those double dots and these little dashes. Those represent vowels. They wouldn't have been there in the original language. In the original... Gotta love plumbing. Those vowels wouldn't have been there in the original language. So you'll notice, and there's a lot more depth to what's happening here than we just kind of get at our first read. And this is about God's math. You'll notice that this is the sh sound, this is the B sound, and that is the T sound. This is the word Shabbat, where we get our word Sabbath. You'll also note that this is the sh sound, this is the b sound, and that's the t sound for the number 7, which is pronounced Shabbat. So in the written language, as you're reading through this creation story, as you're thinking about Sabbath, the word Shabbat and the word Shabbat look exactly the same in the written language. You're starting to see, okay, here there's something that's happening here that we missed in translation. Stop and 7 is God's math for what it means to stop. So now, again here, Shabbat is where we get the word Sabbath, but Shabbat or Sheba is 7. Okay, now with that in mind, let's go back to the original story of Genesis when God creates the earth. Let's go back to what we mean when we talk about keeping the Sabbath, and let's look and see what's inside the text that, because we speak English, we've missed this entire time. So I want to start. Remember, stop. Remember, 7. I want to start with Genesis chapter 1. This is the book. I grew up kind of thinking that Genesis was all these kind of neat stories, and as I got older, it was sort of like, it's this archaic kind of poems. And the more I study the book of Genesis, the more I go in, the more I learn, the more that Genesis is one of the most brilliant theologically deep piece of writing that you will ever read. It is gorgeous as its inspiration by God and the writers. But that's another sermon. But let's keep going. So, day 1, there's this pattern. It starts off with, and God said, let there be light, as it is in day 1. And it goes, and suddenly there's light. God makes it. It's good. And it ends with, and there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Now, you can translate that. Evening and morning literally means the sun set. Morning means the sun rose. So there's this pattern. And God said, and then He made whatever it was that He made. And then at the end He says, this is good. The sun set, the sun rose, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. Now, let's go to day 7. Day 7 is very different pattern. Notice already the distinction between days 1 through 6 and day 7. What happens on day 7? Thus the heavens and the earth were completed. It was finished. God had done it. It was good. And everything was completed in all their vast array. But by the seventh day, God had completed the work he had been doing, and on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. You could read it like this. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed. They were finished in all their vast array. But by the seventh day, the Shabbat, God had completed the work he had been doing. So on the Shabbat day, he Shabbated. This actually is not, we have multiple words for rest and stop in the same way that they did in Hebrew. But this word actually is stopped. God stopped. On the seventh day, Shabbat, God stopped, Shabbated. And so he Shabbated on the Shabbat day. On the Shabbat day, he Shabbated. As we would read that in Hebrew, we would see, 7, stop, 7, 7, stop, 7. He stopped. What's missing? If we were together, you would shout out, this is a very different pattern. Days 1 through 6 is, days 1 through 6, is God said, God did, sun set, sun rose, day 1. God said, God did, day 1. It was good, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. Day 6 ends with, and the sun set, and the sun rose, the sixth day. On the seventh day, we just read that God stopped. But it doesn't say the sun set, the sun rose, day 7. One of the beauties of this passage is God completes, and then he creates this environment that Adam and Eve are invited to perpetually enjoy forever and ever and ever. There was no sunset and no sunrise. Day 7, this completed day where God's presence is enjoyed, is meant to continue forever and ever and ever. It's sort of like you build a house. And the house is being, let's do the church. We're building the church. We're renovating it. But when the renovations are complete, it's going to be finished. We're going to go on in and we're going to enjoy that. Does that mean we don't clean the bathrooms? No, of course not. Does that mean we're not going to have some paint touch up? No, of course not. But the work of creating it is finished. And now the work of enjoying it begins, and we're going to enjoy it forever and ever, in theory. So that's the garden. That's what's happening here. Now, there's another, so we have stop, but we also have rest. Stop again is Sabbath, Shabbat, but we also have this word rest. Now, there's another beautiful interplay with the word rest, just like Shabbat and Shabbat. Same letters, just different vowels. There's another beautiful interplay with rest. Now, stopping and resting aren't the same thing. We know that. You can be running around doing all kinds of things and stop. That doesn't automatically mean you're going to rest. But what it does mean is that you can't rest unless you stop. So that's what we're going to see here with this interplay. It's sort of like faith. The word faith in the New Testament is commitment and follow through. My kids both took up a new sport this school year, this last spring, and both of them involve a follow through. But you can't have a follow through unless you have a beginning. So like in the understanding of faith, we have commitment and then we have follow through. With Sabbath, we have stopping. and then we have resting. So this beautiful interplay comes from Genesis chapter 7 and 8, where there's a recreation story. After the fall, Adam and Eve were meant to live in the garden. Adam and Eve sinned, which caused them to be removed from the garden. And then God begins the work of reconciliation and recreating. The entire Old Testament is this recreation story looking for participants who are willing. God actually finds an initial participant whose name is rest. Let's look. Noah and Noach. So look at it. Notice again here. We have the na and the ah sound. The na and the ah sound. This dot, that dash, this line, that dot, and that dash are vowels that wouldn't have been there. Noah's name means Noach, which is rest. The one in the recreation, I was always told that the flood story was this God's wiping everything out. It's God's recreating story through this rest man. God gives us rest through the rest man. And then, of course, rest is nuach. So Noach and nuach, which is to rest, to settle in. God's salvation plan involves resting. This is as much about the end, the arrival, the time spent with God. So we rest, or we stop, and then we rest. And to rest, this nuach is the idea of settling in. So you've had a hard day at work, you come home, you switch. At our house, we switch into our comfy clothes, and then you settle down in your chair, maybe ice cream, maybe popcorn, maybe wine, whatever your settling down is. And you sit down and you begin to rest. You've settled in. You have to stop first, but then we rest, we settle in. We're settling in to God's presence. So now we're starting to see this Sabbath imagery of stopping and resting that we're going to be exploring for the next 5 weeks together. I want to give us kind of an intro. We're going to do some of these. And if you have any questions about Sabbath, always shoot us an email. We'd love to kind of look at those as we keep going. So now you might be going, Peter, I'm not really sure. I see the number game that you just did with Sabbath and stopping. I'm not really sure I'm convinced that the story of Noah is a story of rest, because that's certainly not the way I've been told it. Same. Let's look. As always, we take God's word for it, not our own. Rest. So this is Noah. Genesis chapter 8. Let's read this. Remember, Noach, and Nuach, rest. So this, every time you see Noah, from moving forward, every time you see Noah, you're going to think rest. Just like every time you see 7 now, you're going to think stop. All right. So, but God remembered Noah, when then he had forgotten, it was that he's now turning his attention to Noah. Notice the stopping and the resting. So he has all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent wind over the earth, and the waters receded. What stopped? The rain. We already have a stopping. God stopped the flood. Okay, now what's going to happen? The springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed. They stopped. They Shabbated. The rain Shabbated, falling from the sky. The water began to recede steadily from the earth. And at the end, the culmination, the finish, which sounds like day 7. I wonder if there's going to be any 7 references. At the end of 150 days, the water had gone down. Oh no, 150. Oh wait. And on the 7 and 10 day of the 7th month, the ark came to what? Nuach, rest on the top of the mountains. Here's this as you hear those words now, it just changes the way you read this story. God is recreating, he's redoing Eden and his presence for humanity through this rest man, so that all of us can find a place to rest. Because remember how chaotic the world was with all of the sin and destruction, and through one man, this man of rest, God begins to restore and reshape so that we as humans can find a resting dwelling place with God. Oh, but it gets even better. Let's continue. After 40 days, I want you to be, as we read this, I want you to be thinking, what other stories do we know that sound similar to this? After 40 days, Noah opened a window he had made in the ark, and he sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Raven's coming back. Think, why did the raven come back? He couldn't what? Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could find nowhere to perch. What can't the dove stop doing? Flying. It can't stop. And if it can't stop, it can't rest. Because there was water over the surface of the earth, so it returned to Rest Man in the ark. Rest Man reached out his hand and took the dove. What does the dove do? The dove flies down and settles in and rests on Noah's hand for protection. The word in there literally is nuach. So he took the dove. And the dove brought it back, took the hand and took the dove, brought it back to himself in the ark. Just in case we're not sure, he waited how many days? 7 more days. And again, he sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in his beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Oh, what does that signify? Well, of course, it signifies that the earth is growing, but it also signifies that the dove is going to have a place to rest. But that's not good enough. What else happens? Another 7 days. Then Noah, the rest man, knew the water receded from the earth. He waited. He stopped. 7 more days. Here's a pattern. More days. Sent out the dove again. And this time it did not return to him. Why didn't it return? Because it found a place to rest. 7 days, 7 days. Rest man, place to rest, stop. It sort of reminds me of another story from the New Testament. I'm trying to remember a time after 40 days, someone went into the water, and then a dove, something like a dove, came from heaven and settled down and rested. Remember Jesus' baptism after being in the wilderness for 40 days? He comes to the waters to be baptized, and in his baptism, the Holy Spirit settles down like a dove. Not the Holy Spirit is a dove, it settles down like a dove, pulling us all the way back to this rest man story where one man and the recreation is the story of Jesus. This is the gospel. It's just all of Scripture, right? We believe all of Scripture is inspired and useful for teaching, and it points us to the good news of Jesus Christ. So, Sabbath and rest. This is what we're going to be doing for the next 5 weeks, as I said. But what happens when we refuse to stop and rest? This is actually the idea that caused me to think about, let's do a sermon series on rest. I mean, aside from the fact that I'm going to be on sabbatical, I'm going to be stopped. Now we know what that means. I'm going to be stopping in order to rest. Now, whether I rest or not isn't guaranteed. I have to do that part. The passage that I thought of was like this whole... So, 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles tells the story of the kings, basically from before the King Saul all the way through David, Solomon, until the very end of the monarchy, the story of Israel's sort of national prowess. It's easy for me to say. How does this story end? It doesn't end well. When Israel refuses to follow this pattern and routine that God has set up for them, for Israel, they don't receive rest. See, I've been thinking a lot about this for us as a family, the church family. We've had this forced stopping time, this enforced Shabbat, where we can't do the things the way we used to. We can't worship the way we used to. We can't be with family the way we used to. And now that we're here, now that things are kind of opening back up again and we know so much and people, it feels like we're on the edge of getting out of this. Will we rush back into the patterns that we had before? Probably. Were those good patterns? Not really. Church family, I'm not saying God caused COVID-19 in order to get the church to refocus. But I am saying that through COVID-19 and this forced stopping, we have an opportunity to rest, to lean into, to restructure, to reorganize and pattern our lives after the rhythms and rules that God has given us. See, there was 7 days in a week. And every year on the 7th month, the people of Israel had one of their 7 festivals that lasted a week. And every 7 years, they were supposed to do a special year, a Sabbath, a stopping year where things began to return to normal. And every 7 years was this year of Jubilee, which was this opportunity to signal. And it was called Jubilee because they blew on the horns. They sounded like they sounded the alarm that this is the year where everything returns back to the way it was. Slaves are released. Land is restored. Everything is returned to what it was before. That's God's pattern. But when we refuse to live into God's pattern, we can look back to the people of Israel, to the way that they refused to enter into the rest and the pattern that God had given them. And when we refuse, we should expect the same reality. Not exactly the same, but the same spiritual expectations that the people of Israel experienced. See, how does the monarchy end? How does it stop? Does it end in rest and rule and reign like we saw in Genesis and we'll see again in the book of Revelation? The end when we are joint heirs with Christ and our working is ruling and reigning, which is what Adam and Eve's initial destination and occupation was to be. No, what we see is they refused. In 2 Chronicles 36, they refused to listen to the word saying, stop. There's an old rap song, stop what you're doing because I'm about to ruin. Anyways, but they refused to stop. And a group came in and carried them away. And it was horrible. There was no remedy. And what happens when they're carried away in the end of 2 Chronicles chapter 36? They're carried off to Babylon. And those that survived. Again, I'm not saying that COVID happened because we're unfaithful. I'm saying, can we lean, because we have this experience and what we see in Scripture, can we lean into what God wants to teach us? Notice what happens. They were all carried into exile. This remnant who escaped the sword, they became servants. They did work that wasn't for them. It was for those who were occupying them. Their work wasn't ruling and reigning. Their work was under the service of those for whom they owned them. That's why slavery was so awful. But what happens here? The land enjoyed its stop nuance. Oh no, I think it's stops. All the time of its desolation, it rested until 70 years were completed in fulfillment of the word of Jeremiah. You might want to, as you look at the Hebrew, you could say, the land had enjoyed all her stops, keeping all 70 years. She lay desolate as long as it took to fulfill what hadn't been observed. See, this is the judgment that happens when we refuse to be obedient to God's plan, God's good and pleasing and perfect will. When we refuse to stop, the judgment is we don't get to experience the rest that God had for us. The land is punished. We're punished. Our lives, our lifestyles. But here's the good news. Remember how I said we weren't supposed, like the seventh day wasn't supposed to end? It was supposed to carry on and completion and continue. See, we were meant to be in this resting state. We were meant to be in the work had stopped, and now we were meant to rule and reign and enjoy presence with God. This is what it was supposed to be like. Enter Jesus. Jesus, the judgment is when you don't stop, you don't enter rest. Moses didn't enter the rest. We're going to look at the people of Israel entering rest and those who don't enter rest. Jesus' yoke is easy and his burden is light, and we can enter rest with him. But no, that's the judgment. When we refuse to stop, we don't rest. But notice what Jesus says when he comes on the scene. After the baptism, after the Spirit lands on him and rests like a dove, he goes on what day? The stop day, into the synagogue, and he grabs the scroll and he stands up and he reads. And what does he proclaim? He proclaims the seventh year, the Jubilee year, where things are restored, people are set free, lives are released, things go back to the way that they were. He says, so on the seventh day, he reads the scroll. The Spirit of the Lord has settled on me because he has anointed me to proclaim this good news. Freedom, recovery, setting the oppressed free, proclaiming the year of the Lord's favor. And then all of them knew what was happening. What was happening? This restoration that they had hoped for that hadn't come in like 400 years. Jesus stands up and says, it's here. And then he sits down and they're all looking at him. And he says, today this scripture is what? It's fulfilled in your hearing. And this is the pattern. Jesus dies and completes the work, and he's laid to rest on the stop day. But when the stop day was over, on the first day of the week, see, there's this thing that Genesis, it's the beginning of chapter 2, was the seventh day was also supposed to be the eighth day, because it's supposed to continue. So like the first day of the week is actually day 8 of the last week. And so Jesus, in proclaiming Jubilee, is saying a new eon, a new season is here. And on his resurrection, he's resurrected on the first day of a cosmic new week. The first day of the week, just after the sun sets, sunrise, the first day of the week. And it's not just there. Noah, all the way back, the first day of the first month, Noah is 600, the year the water dried up from Noah. Noah then removed the covering, the 7 and 20 day. Noah, first day of the first month is this recreating. After they fall, the good news is they return. When do they return? On the first year of a king's rule, they come back. So, guys, keeping the Sabbath. Should we go to church? Like church, remember church is a group of people called out, gathering together in order to worship Jesus. That can be 3 people, that can be 3,000 people. Each week, should we gather to join together in worship? 100%. Paul's very clear. Keep meeting together. Like, that's what Christians do. That's followers of Jesus always meet together. That's who we are. That's our very name. Is that what honoring the Sabbath is? No, of course not. Does that mean some people have said, well, that's not what the Sabbath means, so I don't have to go to church? Wrong answer. Correct assessment, wrong conclusion. Is the Sabbath about going to church on Sunday? No, it's not. Because the Sabbath really is Saturday anyways. What's the Sabbath about? Sabbath is about stopping this work that we're doing, the striving and the ceasing. Is it just about stopping? Is it about, if you're halfway? I know farmers, like when the sun goes down on Sabbath, they just leave their like when the harvest has to happen, they just leave the vehicles out in the field. Okay. But if they then go inside and are working on all kinds of, is that stopping? No. Is being legalistic as a parent, you can't do this, you can't do youth sports, you can't blah, blah, blah. No. Sabbath, keeping, observing the Sabbath is about developing a weekly routine that is part of a yearly routine, that is part of a lifestyle routine, knowing that we develop patterns where we stop and turn our attention to Jesus. We settle, we rest, and we settle into Christ's presence. Can you do that without stopping? No. Does stopping guarantee that you settle in with Jesus? No. Honoring the Sabbath is about stopping and developing patterns that settle ourselves in to Jesus. Stopping is a holy activity. Stopping is setting apart activity. Stopping leads to resting with Jesus. The goal of stopping is that not the stopping to, good job, you stop. The goal of stopping is to create space where we can enter presence with Jesus. The garden, Jesus' presence. Noah resting, entering into a presence without all the brokenness. On and on and on into Jesus. Go and wait until I send my Spirit that rests in you, that we can go with Jesus with us always to the ends of the age. Can you be legalistically about this and miss God's resting presence? 100%. I want to just stop for a moment and turn our attention to Jesus. At Eastside, we celebrate communion as a reminder of who Jesus is. And I'm going to do this quickly today, not in a lack of importance, but this is what it means to follow Jesus. The bread is Christ's presence. And we pause, we stop to turn our attention to the body of Jesus that was given for us, that came in so that we could be with. And so, church family, pause and grab your communion elements, bread and the cup. Because Jesus, on the night that he was betrayed, took the loaf of bread and said, "This is my body, my presence given for you so that I can be with you always. Whenever you gather together, eat this bread, remembering that I am with you. Nestle up, settle in with me." So family, take and eat the bread. And in the same way, this is the cup of the new covenant, an agreement given to us in Christ's blood that was shed for us on the cross. When Jesus gave up his Spirit, he said, "It is finished." It's finished. You can't earn this. You can receive this. So family, we're going to take sometimes it gets you. We're going to take the blood. We're going to let it enter into us, remembering that Christ's presence is for us. So family, take and drink the cup. Will you pray with me? Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you that you put in these patterns because you know that we need them to stop. So we then can rest in you for the wonderful gift of your body and your blood. We thank you, Lord. Amen. Here's your assignment for this week. We're going to be doing this for the next, like I said, 5 weeks, the month of May. And these questions are from the Bible Project. They have I'll put up a slide next. You can go on their website. They have a video that's about 4 minutes. It's really simple and helpful. And then they have 14 hour-long podcasts that just go into how Sabbath is woven in. The seventh day, the stopping day, is woven in throughout Scripture from the beginning to the end. But here's some questions. How do you find yourself responding to this unwelcome slowdown of your life? What thoughts and emotions do you experience, and what fears are you aware of? Give yourself some time. How have you responded to this last year? That's revealing in all of us those areas of growth opportunities. And then 2, God's rest in Genesis 2 is all about filling a sacred space with His divine presence. And we'll talk more about that. And celebrating the beauty and abundance of creation. The Sabbath practice is a way for humans to remember God's presence and His ideal purpose for creation. What are some of the simple things you can celebrate or are grateful for? What a good practice. Who can you share that with this week? And finally, if you want to go deeper, here are a couple of resources. BibleProject.com. There's a Sabbath video. There's 14 podcasts on seventh day rest and Sabbath. And if you have any questions that you want us to cover over the next couple of weeks, send them to me, Pastor Peter at eastsideharrisonburg.org, and I'll forward them on to Matt, or depending on which week they go with. Love to hear from you. Love to hear what you're learning and thinking as you worshiped with us today. Friends, wherever you are, Canada or Virginia or somewhere else, I invite you to make time today and again throughout the week and the next week to stop and invite God's presence. Invite yourself to be aware in order to settle in. We're going to sing a song. It's about leaning in to Jesus. And so as we end our sermon and end our worship time today, I want to give you some time to go back to those questions and give yourself some time to stop. Make a commitment for at least this week, maybe the next 2 weeks, maybe the next month, of developing some habits of stop time in order that you can have rest time with God. Family, love you. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
The more I seek you, the more I find you. The more I find you, the more I love you. I wanna sit at your feet, drink from the cup in your hand, lay back against you and breathe, feel your heartbeat. This love is so deep, it's more than I can stand. I melt in your peace, it's overwhelming. The more I seek you, the more I find you. The more I find you, the more I love you. I wanna sit at your feet, drink from the cup in your hand, lay back against you and breathe, feel feel your heartbeat. This love is so deep, it's more than I can stand. I melt in your peace, it's overwhelming. I wanna sit at your feet, drink from the cup in your hand, lay back against you and breathe, feel your heartbeat. This love is so deep, it's more than I can stand. I melt in your peace, it's overwhelming.